Welcome to Statistically Speaking with Dr. E, where we turn numbers into knowledge. Today, we're going to take a step back and critically examine something that all of you interact with probably dozens of times a day without even thinking about it: the Internet of Things, smart homes, and smart cities. Now, these technologies are often marketed as convenient, efficient, even transformative, and they are. But as data scientists and researchers, our job is not just to admire innovation, our job is to interrogate it. We need to ask what data is being collected, who controls it, how secure is it, and perhaps most importantly, is it being used ethically? Understanding these questions is not optional. It's essential if we want to design systems that are not only powerful but also responsible. So let's begin with the big picture. The Internet of Things, or IoT, is fundamentally changing how we live, how we interact with our environments, and even how governments operate. Devices are no longer passive, they are constantly collecting, transmitting, and sometimes acting on data. Think about your daily routine. Your smartwatch tracks your health, your phone tracks your location, your home devices learn your behavior. Now scale that up from individuals to entire cities, and you begin to see the magnitude of what we're dealing with. But with that transformation comes a parallel set of challenges: privacy, security, and ethics. Let's begin with a simple question. What exactly is the Internet of Things? The Internet of Things, or IoT, refers to a network of physical devices, objects that are embedded with sensors, software, and connectivity, enabling them to collect and exchange data. These things can include smart thermostats, wearable health trackers, security cameras, smart refrigerators, autonomous vehicles, even entire traffic systems in cities. Now, here's the key idea: IoT transforms passive objects into active data generators. And as statisticians and data scientists, this should immediately raise a flag. More data, though nor more insights, but also more risk. Let's narrow our focus to smart homes. A smart home is essentially a microcosm of IoT. Devices communicate with each other and with centralized systems to automate tasks and improve efficiency. Example: imagine this: your thermostat learns your schedule, your lights turn on automatically when you enter a room, your refrigerator tracks expiration dates, your voice assistant records your commands. Sounds convenient, right? But here's the question I want you to think about. Where is all this data going? Smart home devices collect highly sensitive data, including daily routines, sleep patterns, conversations, behavioral habits. From a statistical perspective, this is high dimensional, longitudinal behavioral data. Now imagine a company aggregates this data across millions of households. They build predictive models of human behavior. They infer not just what you do, but what you will do. This is where privacy concerns become significant. Consider this scenario. Let's talk about security first. One of the biggest issues with IoT devices is that they are often not designed with security as a priority. Many devices come with default usernames and password, receive infrequent or no software updates, lack robust encryption mechanisms. And here's the key difference from devices like smartphones. Once IoT devices are sold, they are often not actively maintained. So what happens? They become the weakest link in a network, and in cybersecurity, the system is only as strong as its weakest component. Let me give you a concrete example that really illustrates this point. In 2016, something called the Mirai botnet emerged. What it did was surprisingly simple but extremely powerful. It scanned the internet for IoT devices, things like security cameras, home routers, and it exploited devices that were still using default credentials. At its peak, it took control of over 600,000 devices. Now, think about that number for a moment. Those devices were then used to launch a distributed denial of service attack, essentially flooding servers with traffic. Major platforms like Twitter, Netflix were temporarily taken offline. What's important here is not just the scale, it's the mechanism. These devices were always on, poorly monitored, rarely updated, which makes them ideal for attackers. Now let's move from homes to something much larger, smart cities. Cities around the world are integrating IoT technologies to improve efficiency and quality of life. For example, traffic systems adjust the signals dynamically to reduce congestion. Energy grids use smart meters to optimize consumption. Surveillance systems assist with emergency response. Waste management systems optimize collection routes. From an operations research perspective, this is fascinating. We are essentially optimizing complex systems in real time. But, and this is critical, optimization comes with trade-offs. Here's a critical issue. Smart cities collect massive amounts of data about citizens, including location data, movement patterns, social interactions. This is essentially population level surveillance data. Smart city systems often blur the line between public service and surveillance. Sensors and cameras can track movement, monitor behavior, collect continuous streams of data. Now, here's the ethical tension. Citizens typically do not have explicit consent mechanisms, clear visibility into data usage, meaningful options to opt out. So, we have to ask, at what point does data driven governance become intrusive? And this is not just a technical question, it's a philosophical and a policy question. Good governance must inform citizens, provide transparency, ensure accountability, and above all, it must respect human dignity. Let's shift to another critical issue, algorithmic bias. As you know, machine learning models are only as good as the data they are trained on. If the data reflects historical inequalities, the model will not just replicate them, but often amplify them. This is what we call a structural problem. It shows up in areas like hiring, lending, healthcare, criminal justice, and the scale is massive. Millions of people can be affected by decisions that are partially or fully automated. A classic example is predictive policing. These systems use historical crime data to predict where crimes are likely to occur. But here's the issue. If certain neighborhoods were historically over-policed, the data will show higher crime rates there. So what does the model do? It sends more police to those same neighborhoods, which leads to more arrests, more recorded incidents, more data reinforcing the same pattern. This creates a feedback loop. From a statistical standpoint, this is a form of endogeneity and selection bias interacting dynamically. The model is not discovering truth, it's reinforcing history. Now let's talk about data ownership. This is one of the most under-discussed but critically important issues. Most users don't know exactly what data is collected, don't know who it's shared with, can't easily revoke access. Consent in many cases is fragmented, buried in long terms of service documents, practically meaningless, and even when users want control, they face limitations. Data portability is restricted. Platforms retain broad usage rights, so effectively individuals generate data but have very limited control over it. Another layer of complexity comes from how these systems are built. Modern IoT and AI ecosystems involve multiple vendors, cloud providers, API integrations, third-party analytics platforms. This creates a distributed responsibility problem. When something goes wrong, who is accountable? Who audits the system? Who ensures compliance? The more complex the pipeline, the harder it becomes to trace errors, assign responsibility, ensure transparency. So, what do we do about all of this? We need structured, principled approaches to designing and deploying these systems. Responsible AI is not just a concept, it's a framework for decision making. It includes transparency systems should be explainable and well documented. Fairness outcomes should be evaluated across different populations. Accountability, there must be clear responsibility for decision. This can be translated into concrete practices. For example, data minimization, only collect what you actually need, inform the consent, make it clear, explicit, and understandable. Security by design, don't treat security as an afterthought, build it in from the beginning. These are not just technical guidelines, they are ethical commitments embedded in system design. And this brings us to you. As graduate students and future data scientists, you are not just analysts or engineers, you are decision makers. Every choice you make, what data to include, how to process it, which model to use, how to evaluate it, has ethical implications. You need to question your data sources, test for bias, document your assumptions, and think critically about the downstream impacts because ultimately your work will shape real world outcomes. Let's summarize. The Internet of Things offers convenience, efficiency, innovation, but it also introduces privacy risks, security vulnerabilities, ethical dilemmas. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and click the bell to stay updated on all things data and statistics. Thanks for watching.